Today we're going to talk about comparing and ordering fractions. For instance, compare 5/8 and 7/10. There are two ways to compare fractions. One is to use the least common denominator or just a common denominator. And the second is to convert the fractions to decimals. This video is going to explain how to use a common denominator to compare fractions. The next video will show you how to convert fractions to decimals in order to compare. Okay, so let's look at using the least common denominator to compare the two fractions 5/8 and 7/10. Down here I've listed the multiples of 8 and the multiples of 10, which are my two denominators, and I'm going to come up with a common denominator, the least common. So I look on both lists and I see that 40 is the smallest multiple that they have in common. Now I notice down the road here that they also have 80 as a common multiple. And we want to remember that because I'm going to show you a shortcut in a few slides. So the first thing you do is find a common denominator. I'm going to work with the least common denominator or the least common multiple, which is 40. And then I'm going to make equivalent fractions. What did I multiply 8 by to get 40? 8 times 5. And so I multiply 5 times 5 and I get 25 40ths. What did I multiply 10 by to get 40? 10 times 4 is 40. 7 times 4 is 28. After I have my new equivalent fractions with the same denominator, it's very easy for me to compare them because I pick the one with the largest numerator. I compare the numerators. So 25 40ths and 28 40ths, which is greater? Well, 28 40ths is greater. So I could write that as 5/8 is less than 7/10, because 7/10 is equivalent to 28 40ths, so 28 40ths or 7/10 is the greater fraction, the fraction having the larger value. Here's a cool shortcut. Remember how we saw that 80 was a common denominator of 8 and 10, but it wasn't the least common? Well, watch. 8 times 10 is 80, so I've got a new common denominator of 80. 5 times 10 is 50. 10 times 8 is 80. 7 times 8 is 56. So now I have 50 and 56, and I know that 56 80ths is greater. So 7/10 is still the greater fraction, of course, because it's not going to change. But watch the shortcut. I can just multiply the diagonals and compare. 8 times 7 is 56. 10 times 5 is 50. Which is greater? 56 is greater than 50. So 7/10 is the greater fraction. Notice it was the same as these numerators over here. So just multiplying diagonally will help you see which fraction is greater. It's a great shortcut. That's why it works though. So let's look at 6/8 and 7/9. I could find a common denominator, and in this case, the least common denominator is 72 anyway. But watch, I can just do 8 times 7 is 56. 9 times 6 is 54. And 56 is greater than 54, and so 7/9 is the greater fraction. Look down here at 9/10 and 14/15. I can multiply 10 times 14, and I know that 10 times 14 is 140, because when I multiply by 10, I'm just adding a 0 to the end. 15 times 9, I'll be honest, I have to work that one out. 15 times 9, 9 times 5 is 45. Carry my 4, 9 times 1 is 9,
Teachers,
plus
for this
4.
interruption, we are testing the intercom at this time. Thank you.
I'm going to keep going. Okay, so now I have 15 times 9, and that is 135. And then I have 140 is greater than 135, so 14/15 is greater than 9/10, or 9/10 is less than 14/15. Now when you look at a problem like this and it's a mixed number and we're asked to compare, well, first of all, think of the obvious. If the whole number is bigger, if they have two different whole numbers, which whole number is larger? 4 and 5/6 or 5 and 19/20? 5 is bigger than 4, so we know that this one's the larger mixed number. Let's look at here at 2 and 7/8 and 2 and 5/6 though. Well, I have the same whole number, and so I'm just going to multiply the diagonals of the fractions. 8 times 5, can you see that that's 8 times 5, which is 40. 7 times 6, which is 42. 42 is bigger than 40, and so 2 and 7/8 is the greater mixed number. Now, you also may be asked to order the fractions from least to greatest. And the way to do that, again, is to come up with a common denominator. Here, because I have 10 and 6 and 15, I want to come up with the least common denominator here. So I've listed the multiples of 10, I've listed the multiples of 6, and I've listed the multiples of 15. And I found that 30 is my least common multiple. So I'm going to make new fractions, which are equivalent fractions, with the denominator 30. 10 times 3 equals 30, and so 9 times 3 is 27. 6 times 5 is 30, and so 5 times 5 is 25. And 15 times 2 equals 30, and so 14 times 2 equals 28. Now, they have all the same denominators, so it's very easy to order or compare. 27/30, 25/30, 28/30. I'm ordering from least to greatest, so the smallest numerator is 25/30. It's 25, so this is the smallest fraction. The next smallest numerator is 27, and so this is the next smallest fraction, or the next biggest. And then the biggest one is 28/30. And so the order of these fractions is 5/6, 9/10, and 14/15. Be careful, sometimes it will tell you to order from greatest to least, so always read the directions. Now, if you want to find out how to compare fractions the other way, which is to change fractions to decimals to compare them, you need to watch the video called Converting Fractions, Decimals, and Percents. All right?